Hello, and welcome to Artfully Told, where we share true stories about meaningful encounters with art.
I think artists help people have different perspectives on every aspect of life.
All I can do is put my part out into the world.
It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It doesn't have to be perfect ever, really. I mean, as long as you're enjoying doing it and you're trying your best, that can be good enough.
Art is something that you can experience with your senses and that you just experience as so beautiful.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Artfully Told. My name is Lindsey, and I am so excited to have as my guest today the wonderful Trenna Reed. And Trenna is a artist. She is also, oh my goodness, what should we call you? Like Administrative Organizer Extraordinaire. And I'm there's like an actual job title for you, and I don't want to butcher it, but that's you in my mind.
I usually just say program coordinator.
Okay, all right.
Put a name to it.
Perfect.
But it's basically like, I would say, an assistant to the ever fabulous Cheryl Kimmi. Yes, and we'll definitely share a little bit more about that. But also, Trenna is an accomplished dancer, choreographer, and teacher, and is a lover of the arts in general, and she shares them with the world in a pretty unique way and in kind of an administrative capacity for the Kansas City Fringe Festival. And so I am so excited to have you on. Thank you, Trenna, for joining us today. Yes, of course. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, and I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what kind of different arts you dabble in and just, share with us who you are. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, art is in my family in several capacities. So my mother is a dance teacher, and we still teach dance together to this day, which is really amazing. It's one of my favorite ways to pass the time. And her mother was also a dance teacher, and her aunt was a dance teacher. They each had their own studios. So it definitely runs in the family. My aunt was a dance teacher. She recently retired. And my other aunt, this is all on my mom's side, by the way. My other aunt was also a dance teacher early on. And then she transitioned to, I think, teaching English. And I still teach dance. My father, on the other hand, this is how art is also in our family. He was involved in theater, and he's a wonderful singer. So he passed that ability to sing on to me. So I did choir and everything like that all throughout elementary, middle, and high school. And I still sing whenever I can, just not as often. I was trying to get back into voice lessons before all of this craziness started. So hopefully after it's calmed down a little bit, I can get back into that as well. And my father actually got his singing from his father. So that trait has been on my father's side of the family. And I was also, as far as other arts that I've been involved in, I've also been involved in theater. I love acting. I haven't been able to pursue it as much lately, but I did theater all throughout high school, and I was in a play in college as well. It was an awesome experience because not a lot of dancers at my college got to be involved in, straight plays. So that was a really cool experience to go back and revisit that art form in college. What else am I missing? Oh, I have a 4.5-month-old daughter named Sage, and she is just wonderful and, has kind of put everything into perspective for me. I feel like it kind of makes art that much more meaningful because I want to pass on my love of art and the importance of it, that concept, to her. Because it really shaped my life. So I'm hoping that it can shape hers as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when you're not teaching, so I guess what else do you do? Like we got your job title earlier, but tell us a little bit about your involvement in the Kansas City Fringe Festival and that job that you have too.
Sure. So actually for the Fringe Festival, my first year, I started off in, I would say, a lighter capacity as the head of ticket sales, which is called Fringe 411. So that was my title the first year, and that was really all I worked on because it's very time consuming. And then I kind of just stayed involved with the organization throughout the year after that. And then when it came back around time to do the festival in 2019, I was in a position where I could step up and take on a larger role. And Cheryl's program coordinator had left because she got a job offer somewhere else and started to go in a different direction with her career. So Cheryl asked me to kind of step up, at least, you know, we weren't sure if it was going to be temporary until she found someone else, because I still have other jobs too. So I didn't know if I could take on the program coordinator position full on, but I was at least going to step in for a little while until they figured out if they could find someone else to fill that slot on the team. So last year was my first year as program coordinator for the Fringe Festival, and I learned a lot. I continue to learn. There are so many aspects to putting on a festival. And when I was in college, I was on the performance track. So I didn't have a ton of opportunities to do behind the scenes work besides the costuming work that I did. And working for the Fringe Festival has really allowed me to take on some more of those management roles, which I enjoy. I do. I didn't think that I would be that type of person to be in an administrative role, but it's really gratifying at the end of everything. And, you know, it teaches you patience and communication skills, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an amazing experience. And I mean, this time around will be a whole different animal because of everything going on. So everything's kind of up in the air with the festival right now. But, you know, the way things are going, unless we have to shut back down again, I think we'll be able to do the festival in some capacity.
Great.
Whether that's trying to do some things virtually or just condensing it to like 2 weekends. We're going to try and think of creative ways to keep it going, because we really don't want to just have to shut it down completely for this year and lose that momentum that we try and bring.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just to give our audience some perspective who might not be familiar with the Fringe Festival, do you mind sharing some stats about the magnitude of what the Fringe Festival typically is, as far as all the different groups you're trying to organize and coordinate? Yeah, because that's amazing. Yeah, I can definitely give you some ballpark. I can't think off the top of my head of what attendance is, but our festival is a pretty large festival. There's lots of different Fringe festivals around the world. Some of them are really tiny and some of them are huge, like Orlando Fringe is one of the biggest in the US. And I think they put on something like 150 shows or something, or 150 different productions, which is crazy. We do around 75 productions. So that means there's 75 different performance groups or performers if it's just a one-person show. And each of those shows has usually 5 slots in which they perform. So we're coordinating, 75 times 5. I can't do that math in my head. That many actual individual shows. And then we usually work with, I would say, between 500 and 750 artists within that.
So I didn't realize it was that many people until I was trying to go through and get some demographics for our grant writers. We have to kind of go into detail about, how many people are involved, how many artists are involved, our attendance, things like that. So I was going through and looking at all of the waivers that the performers have to fill out. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize we have easily over 500 people involved in this festival just on the performing side.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it runs for 10 days. And, we'll usually the first, well, I guess technically 2 weeks, because we start off with our visual arts, which is also another component of it. So that's adding another, I think around 50 people, but another component of it that we're coordinating at the same time. And, we've actually been trying to grow that aspect of it a little bit more. We don't want the visual artists to feel like they're in the background. So we usually start off with our visual arts opening, and that'll be usually, I think on a Sunday is when we usually do it. And then the following Friday is when the actual performances start for the festival. And then the performances will go for 10 days. So it's a lot. We have a lot of volunteers that help, and we wouldn't be able to do it without our amazing volunteer base.
Yeah, it is an undertaking. I commend you for your patience and your adaptability, because so much that you guys do and pour into that festival every year. So
yes.
Whew.
You have to have some sort of faith in humanity to be able to do this job.
Yeah, that seems right. Oh my goodness. Yes. Well, thank you for sharing about that. And I know you probably have like a gazillion stories just from the festival, from your own art experiences, but does anything kind of stand out as something you wanted to share today?
I'm trying to think of specifically for the festival, because there's so much happening every day during the festival. And well, this is just, I just saw, this was a social media post on Mother's Day. And this is just like a little story to put it into perspective how hard our director for the festival works. So her birthday is June, I think it's June 12th or sometime around then. And she was, I think, out to eat with her family, and her son Brent posted that she had forgotten that it was her birthday.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, this is, par for the course for Cheryl, because she works so hard and never stops.
Yeah.
That she'll forget it's her birthday.
Oh my word.
Until her family reminds her. I mean, because that's about a month away until the festival is opening.
Yeah.
So we're getting pretty into the thick of it at that point.
Right.
So, I mean, I have lots of little stories like that about Cheryl, and she's just a peach. She's the best. And we all love working for her. And she is the heart and soul of the festival. And her positive energy just exudes, and it shapes the experience of the festival. And she's always kind and patient, but she also knows when she has to draw the line and give tough love sometimes. So I think finding the balance for that is one of her strengths.
Yeah, I think so too. She is a remarkable woman, and yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Yes.
I think everyone who meets her is because she's just, like you said, she's so kind and she's so inclusive. And then when she needs to put her foot down, she can. But until that time, she's just the loveliest, so much fun. I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I was just thinking of another, this is just kind of a glimpse into what it's like behind the scenes.
Yes.
So when we're like at the end of the night, what we do is we tally, well, that's a, simplistic way to put it, but we figure out the ticket sales and try and make sure that everything balances out, because we keep track of the attendance of each show. Because at the end of the festival, we hand out the best of awards, and currently the best of is based on attendance for your show. So, whoever has the most attendance for a certain venue wins best of that venue. So what we have to do at the end of each night is we have to, count all the money, count all the tickets that we've received, see how many comps were used. And when we got down to the end of the festival and we're trying to figure out best of, we were, it's like 11:45 at night and we're trying to get it out by midnight. But our last show for the night ended at, I think, 11:30. So we're waiting for the last envelopes of the ticket tallies to come back. And there's a couple of shows that are within one person in the audience to determine who won. And I mean, it was like that for several of them.
Wow.
So, and sometimes the numbers don't add up and we're just like, I don't know if this is accurate or how we can make sure that we have the most accurate count, because the numbers aren't adding up. So
yeah, because they're cross-referencing. Is that correct? Sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, but just for context for somebody who doesn't know, because you're cross-referencing from the usher count versus ticket sales?
Correct.
Or okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the usher count, and then we use our online ticket platform called Ticket Leap. And some of our volunteers are not as familiar with technology. So sometimes they have issues getting everything entered into Ticket Leap. And it's also stressful for them when they're trying to get people checked in and seated. So sometimes they don't have time to enter it in as accurately as possible. So it's just, there's a lot of different factors going into it that can affect the way that the numbers turn out at the end.
So I know that it's been close a few years, but oh my goodness, I can't believe within maybe one audience member, oh my word, that's amazing.
It was stressful. I think we got the numbers out close to midnight. I honestly don't remember. I was probably delirious by that point. So.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. Let's talk about Trenna for a second, folks, because okay, so I had met Trenna because my company also performs at the Fringe Festival. So I had met Trenna briefly, but then we didn't actually sit down and have a conversation until I think August, maybe?
Yeah,
is when
it was the beginning of August.
Yeah, and so, and that, and at that time I found out she was pregnant. She shared that with me, and I just remember thinking what? You just literally changed your entire sleep schedule for the Fringe Festival, because first of all, that is 14 days of chaos. And oh my word. And then she's pregnant and she's such a powerhouse, still wants to keep, doing all the things, up until her due date. So speaking of that, I was privileged enough to have Trenna as one of the choreographers for my company's Nutcracker production, which we called Cracked. And so it was an original show, all original choreography to kind of celebrate Kansas City. So it's a little more unique in that way. And Trenna is choreographing and setting the choreography and is at our shows being our backstage coordinator. And she's amazing. And she's taking our warm-up classes. And how much time did you have left before you were about to give birth?
I had about 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, I think.
And she's wearing pretty good. So,
that's good.
I really tried to keep active. I actually say that the first trimester, the first trimester is usually comparable with the third in that it's pretty hard. But I would say my energy level was definitely lower for the first trimester than it was for the third. And I just had so many things going on in November and December. So I didn't really have a choice to slow down.
Oh my goodness.
And my husband had to kind of put into perspective that I needed to slow down because I'm not good at taking care of myself in that sense, because I feel better when I stay busy, but sometimes I get to the point where I don't know how to balance my life because I try and make myself so busy. So I was going to try and keep teaching until I think a week before my due date, or maybe a week and a half before. And finally, I was getting so tired from everything that was going on.
No kidding.
My husband had to have a serious conversation with me and was like, you can't keep just going on like normal.
Right.
So I'm really glad that he helped me put that into perspective, because I needed that wake up call.
No, literally, folks, she seriously is a superwoman. She shows up to every show that we did in our dress rehearsal, and she's wearing heels. Okay. Looks stunning, of course. Takes the ballet warm-up class, and then does all the backstage coordinating, and is, in theory, literally could give birth at any time. Yeah, just amazing.
Can we talk about your sister, though?
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea that she was 7.5 months pregnant at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Once I found out that she was pregnant, I was like, maybe she's 4 or 5 months pregnant. No, 7 months pregnant. Wow. I can't imagine doing Sugar Plum and being 7 months pregnant.
Yeah. Okay. So my sister is another superwoman, and she danced one of the quintessential roles of the Nutcracker, which is basically the Sugar Plum Fairy role. We called it something different in our show, but on point. Plus she did Snow. Plus she was in all the group scenes, right? All the party scenes, and Flowers, which was an insane dance. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I choreographed it. I can say that.
Standing backstage and watching everyone on the side of the stage, heaving for breaths, and, and poor Sophie had some respiratory issues going on. So she had to take her inhaler backstage. And I was like, I have been there. I know how that feels. I had to do that I was the Sugar Plum for our production when my dance studio did the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
And in between the variation and the coda, I had to take a couple puffs of my inhaler to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, so the Nutcracker is probably a difficult ballet for anyone involved, but with a smaller company, I mean, I make this joke, but it's reality. You're either dancing or you're changing. There's no downtime. Yeah. None.
Absolutely.
So as soon as those first notes of the, opening number happen, you just 2 hour.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if it's quite 2 hours, but an hour and a half of cardio.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
my sister's doing this 7.5 months pregnant and rocking it. It was a miracle. But anyway. Yeah. So I'm just curious, Trenna, is there one thing that you maybe were surprised by, or that you learned? That could be anything about art or about organization or people or whatever, something that's kind of stood out as maybe unexpected when you started taking over the coordination of the Fringe Festival?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is just, I'm so used to being on the performing side of it, and I get so much joy from that. I never knew that you can get the same kind of feeling when you're working behind the scenes for something as well. Because, I would just describe, when I'm on stage, I just feel like a different part of my soul has awakened. I'm getting really deep here, but that's the best way I can describe it.
Absolutely.
And towards the end of the festival, when we've done all the grunt work and everything is kind of coming together, it's that same feeling where I feel like the artist in me has come to the forefront, and it makes you fall in love with your art form even more, or fall in love with I guess, the Fringe Festival and what it represents even more. Yeah, I was surprised that I could get that feeling from being a program coordinator as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I can relate, and that is really interesting. And that's great to know too about yourself, that you do have so many different, I don't know, ways to, when you engage in the arts in general, you have then multiple avenues that allow you to feel that joy, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Absolutely. And, I felt that same thing with costuming when my alma mater asked me to come back and fill in for the costume mistress position at Oklahoma City University for the dance program, because their costume mistress was having her second baby. And I had worked in the costume shop while I was there getting my degree for my work study. And I had been heavily involved in that costume shop and knew the way that it operated and was familiar with the staff. So they asked me to come back and head that up for a couple of months. And I was super nervous because the extent of my costuming was being involved in dance and theater and being around costumes, knowing how to sew once I got to college, and the work that I had done in the costume shop. Besides that, I don't really have a background in like costume design or anything like that. So I was just kind of going in there and winging it. And it was a really, really great feeling at the end of it, knowing that I had helped to create and manage this amazing team, because the students that work in the costume shop, I would not have been able to do that job if they had not been there to lead each other and really step up to the plate while the costume mistress was gone. And, I got that same feeling watching the shows and watching the costumes on stage and seeing everything come to fruition, I guess, and knowing that I had made some of the decisions that contributed to the costumes working. So that was a really incredible experience too.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if I'll ever be like a costume designer or anything like that. I thought about exploring that avenue as well, but maybe that'll be something that I try to delve into a little bit more later in life. Mm-hmm. But, it was that same feeling of the artist in me awakening, I guess.
Yeah, and representing in a different way than you had really explored before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really neat. Well, thank you so much for sharing just about your experiences, and I love hearing behind the scenes stories, and just, it's so funny. It's wonderful as an audience member. You get to kind of see the final picture, and you don't get to see necessarily everything that goes into it, but I love the real talk of of behind the scenes, because there's a lot to it, and it can get messy, and it's difficult, but you look at the end result and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's definitely a gratifying experience. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just have a couple questions that I like to ask my guests, if you don't mind me asking you. Okay. So first, how do you personally define art, or what is art to you?
I would say art is human expression, because I guess the way that I think about it is, of all the species on this planet, as far as we know, humans are really the only ones who can convey art and understand art, I guess. Dogs can watch TV, but they don't really comprehend what's going on. So that, I would say, it's a human expression. And for me, it's art is love and passion, and it's how we express those emotions, or any emotions. which is such an important part of being a human being.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what do you think is the most important role of an artist?
I think probably connecting to the audience, whether it be the person looking at your painting or the person watching you perform or watching the movie you created, just finding some way to connect to the people who are consuming that art.
I love that. That is a very unique answer. I've never heard somebody describe it like that before, and I think that's incredibly important. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then my final question, and I'll explain my terms a little bit, but do you think that art should be inclusive or exclusive? So what I mean by that is exclusive, kind of referring to an artist create something, they share it with the world, and then they let the world interpret it the way that they will. So they don't really provide context. Maybe there's not a title. Maybe you don't know the inspiration behind it. Versus inclusive, where the artist does share something. So maybe it's program notes, or maybe it's a description, or the inspiration behind it. It's basically some context so that the audience has a hint of what's going on.
Right. That's a good question. But I really think it depends on the artist, and it depends on the audience or the consumer of the art. Because, I mean, for me, sometimes I do like getting that context, and it helps me understand what's going on better. And I feel like I have a better experience with that art form when I have that insight. But on the other hand, like for instance, last night I was watching a show called Ray Donovan I think it's on Showtime. And there was a part where he picked up a Bible, and when he turned to the front of it, you see a cross. And then in the song that was playing, you hear an organ. They just kind of like snuck that in there as a sort of symbolism and connecting the music to what was on screen. And it was cool for me to make that discovery on my own, as opposed to being told, hey, we put this in here because of this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think it depends on the person looking or experiencing the art, and how that artist wants to connect with their audience. Do they want them to figure it out on their own because it will be more meaningful that way? Or is it so abstract that they need some sort of context to be able to fully grasp and appreciate that art?
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. Well, thank you again so much, Trenna, for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say on behalf of myself, but not just on behalf of myself, on behalf of the world, I really appreciate that you share your art with the world, whether that's your dancing, your choreographing, teaching, but just all the ways that you bring art to the world, even, singing or costume design and administration, the organization of it is so important. And so I just want to say thank you, because when you bring that to the world, I think you make it a more beautiful place. So I appreciate that you share, and
thank you so much.
Thank you.
That means
Well, thank you also, everyone who has listened to this episode. If you feel as inspired as I do, I would love for you to share it with maybe a friend or two, and we will catch you next time. If you have a story to share with us, we would love that so much. And I hope your day has been artfully told.